Hello everybody. Now, a question which crops up quite a lot is how do you avoid subconsciously, particularly, copying somebody else's music? Well, I have some advice. There's no one magic solution to this, but I've got 3 reasons why it happens and 7 things you can do to prevent it. And if that's your idea of fun, then stick with us and even think of subscribing. Right. The reason it happens, the most obvious one, is you do it deliberately. You kind of quite like somebody's track and you're going to do something similar. Or you're working on a film or a game or something like that and they've used a temp track, which is a piece of commercial music they can't clear, but they just use in the edit. And they say, do you think, we've got Star Wars in the edit, could you possibly just write something similar to that? Don't do it. Don't go there, okay? This is the easiest one to avoid. It's deliberate, so deliberately don't do it. Yeah? Okay. Now, the next 2, how does it happen that you write something subconsciously that is absorbed into your head and it just comes back out through your fingers and gets you into trouble? Okay, I've got 2 takes on this. One is an effect which has been noticed in psychology, much studied, called the mere exposure effect. This is based on the work of Robert Zionk back in the 60s and 70s, where what he noticed was, the essence of it is that if you're exposed to something, a picture, a sound, whatever, particularly sort of fairly subliminally, or so it doesn't really register on your brain, when you're then given a choice of a whole load of things later, a whole load of pictures or whatever, you're likely to favour the one you have previously been exposed to. Do you see what I mean? So the fact that you don't even remember seeing this happy smiling face out of a group of pictures, you go, oh, that person looks really nice, I'm going to choose that one. Okay, that's how it... Now, fast forward to the world of music, okay? So you're listening to music all day long. It's going whizzing into your brain from all possible places. Then you sit down to write a tune. All these things are sort of bubbling away in the back of your mind, because we're never writing a completely original tune. It is always on the shoulders of giants. We're always, programmed to some degree by what we've heard before. Okay. So you don't remember this piece of music, but you're, like most people when they're writing tunes, trying lots of options, okay? So you might have dozens of different little motifs you're playing with, and then one of them just stands out as being better than the others. This is the mere exposure effect, saying, you've heard this one before, so choose that one. You don't know that that's what's happening, but that's what's happening. So the mere exposure effect, I think, explains to some degree how we accidentally end up more likely to copy somebody else's piece of music we've been exposed to before than choosing the completely original piece of music which we've just written ourselves. Go figure. Okay. The other reason I think these things happen, and there's a really good logic to this, is it's the kind of musical equivalent of convergent evolution. Convergent evolution is where different creatures arrive at the same solution to the same problem. Dolphins and fishes, for example. Okay, they're marine animals, they need to get around, so they develop fins and flippers and all that kind of thing, which look very similar to one another. If you look at a shark and look at a dolphin, they don't look that different, but they have totally different evolution journeys to the same place. Birds and bats, okay, same idea, convergent evolution. Presented with a problem, there are only so many logical solutions to it, and there's probably one best solution to it. Fast forward to the world of music. You might have a particular chord progression, the much hackneyed 1-5-6-4 or something. Although there are, people say, oh, there's only so many notes, actually, by the time, you factor in all the sort of rhythmic variation and everything else, there's almost infinite variety of different tunes you can write, but people tend to gravitate towards certain chord progressions, certain phrases, certain things like this, and there will be a best solution, and the best solution has probably been thought of before. So convergent evolution will lead you down the same track as some musician previously and potentially lead you into trouble. This is what I mean about convergent evolution. So here we have my keyboard. If you start with a chord progression, let's go this one, which is quite popular in superhero world. So you start on a C, you go to an A flat, and then you go to an F. Okay, those three chords crop up a lot in movies, for example. So you go, here's one, C, so then you're going to, what is it? It's a mediant relationship to A flat. And then you go down another mediant relation down to F. Okay, now if you're going to write a tune to go with that, it's okay, so we start on C, and you want it to be superheroish, it's going to be up, and so that's often involving a rising fifth or a rising sixth, or a fourth. Already you're starting to sound like other stuff. So in order to make it sound good, you go, oh yeah, well, we like this chord progression because this relationship of thirds has got a kind of interesting, it's sort of, it feels nice and logical, but it also feels slightly different. And if you go to the third one, it gets you to a nice place, and then you're back to the beginning. So you can see how that kind of chord progression works well. But then you are limited in, if you're going to go for a particular feeling, in this case, I'm an uplifting hero, it's going to have the rising sort of horn call type thing. So before you know it, without really meaning to, you can end up coming up to a very similar solution. Let me give you another example. Okay, let's start on G minor. If you're playing a tune, it's not the rules of tune writing, because there's no such thing really in a way, but what most people will do is they will see the viable tones available to them if they're writing a tune which is in G minor, obviously G, B flat and D, and then you can pass through A and C, and then you're going to change to, say, a C major chord. Where are you going to go next? You're going up, and it's going to lead you to the E. So anybody writing and then going to C is likely to go to the same place, because there's a logic to the way in which we write music. And sometimes, in order to be original and not to fall into the trap of sounding like other people, you have to push back against that and find a way of finding an alternative way of speaking. When there's an obvious solution, you've got to try and not get sucked into that. There you go. Okay, Clever Clogs, what can you do about it? Okay, there is no one-stop shop. There is no, haha, get out of jail free. This is a very difficult problem. If it wasn't a difficult problem, famous songwriters and composers would not be getting into trouble like this all the time. But there are some things you can do which will reduce the risk of this happening. There is a sort of technology. It wouldn't it be nice if there was a sort of global database of every melody ever written? There sort of is, and it won't surprise you to learn. It comes from Google. If you go into the Google app on your phone and press the microphone button and go, what piece of music is this? Dum 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 da dum dum da dum 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 da dum dum da dum.
Sorry, I wasn't able to recognise this song.
Try again. Dum 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 da dum dum da dum. Dum 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 da dum dum da dum 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 da da dum 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 da da.
Sounds like one of these.
Imperial March, Darth Vader's theme. It's not perfect though, and one of the problems is that a lot of what you'll do when you come to accidentally copy somebody else's music is you won't copy the whole thing. You'll just copy a little phrase which will just insert itself into your tune, or it won't be literal, but it'll be close enough to give you a problem. So Google is making great strides forward in this, and that's great, but it's not going to get you out of trouble. So we have to look for something else. The best solution is a human solution, actually. Some people are particularly good at identifying pieces of music which are familiar from other settings. And when you find people who are good at that, make sure you use them and hold on to them. So if somebody once says, but you've got to give them the freedom to do it. If they say, that sounds a little bit like Ed Sheeran or John Williams or whatever. And it turns out they're right, run your tunes past them. Say, does this remind you of anything? But you've got to give them the freedom to do that, because a lot of people will stand back from saying, your music sounds exactly like Hans Zimmer, or you've just ripped off somebody's tune. People love to do this, but it's also kind of so. But people who are able to do this really accurately are worth their weight in gold. I have a person who I trust for this job, and his name is Brad, and he's my assistant. And so if I have that, I'm not sure what about this, I'll play the tune to Brad, and Brad knows he can say, look, you've just rewritten the Hunger Games. This is how it works. Right, I've got a tune and I need to know if it's completely original or whether I've heard it somewhere else. I've got my assistant Brad on the other end of the video. Say hello, Brad.
Hello.
That's it. Right, I just want to run this little tune past you. You tell me if it sounds familiar at all.
Okay.
How does that sound? Does that sound like anything you've heard before?
I don't think so. 100% original.
Brilliant. Right, we'll just go straight into production then. Thanks very much. Well, Brad can't be right every single time. But no, I mean, in all seriousness, I think a good human person to rely on is probably the best solution. But you can help yourself by putting the tune you've written into a whole range of different contexts. In other words, you might have written a tune which is in a major key quite fast. Try playing it back in a minor key. Try playing it back slower. Try playing it as though it's swung. Try playing it without any chordal accompaniment. Put it in different contexts and it might reveal a similarity that was not obvious before. Because sometimes what you've done is you've rewritten a tune at double time, or you've rewritten a minor tune in a major key. And so then you'll go, oh, I know what that is, and then you're in business, okay? So, like this, really. Re-expressing an idea, a musical idea, faster, slower, major, minor. So, for example, we just had my epic tune, which Brad had never heard before, which goes... Okay, if we slow it down... and maybe move it into a minor key... suddenly it starts to sound more familiar. So, if just because you're going, I don't know, it doesn't immediately sound like Peppa Pig, etc. I'm going to get so many copyright strikes for this video, which is ironic because the video is about not breaching other people's copyright. I'm sorry, okay? I'm genuinely sorry. All this in part relies on that little voice in your head saying, something's not quite right. Something's not quite right. And it's a balancing act, because on the one hand you need to listen to that little voice, but on the other hand you can't let it totally stop you writing music. So you need to set the little voice to one side, but give yourself a bit of space to listen to it when it's necessary. So write the tune, but then don't rush into the commercial exploitation of the tune by sticking it up on Spotify or sticking it into the film instantly. Because normally, my experience is, another tip, give yourself time. Given a week or two, often you suddenly wake up in the night and go, I know what that is. I know what it is. I know what I've done. Now that's fine, because then you can change it. However, if it's already all over Spotify, Radio 1, or the main titles of a new TV show, it's too late. So give yourself, when you're writing tunes, try and give yourself a bit of time for them to sink in and for you to assimilate them with other stuff which might be out there, and to take a wide view with your friends and trusted confidants as to other people who may think, yeah, that's the one, that's the one. Okay, there's another basic principle at play here, and it sort of reflects back to the convergent evolution thing, and that is the simpler the motif or tune, and the more obvious the chord progression, the more likely the tune is to be drawing on a tune which has already been written, or to be, because you're coming to the same conclusion. If you're using hackneyed chord progression, 1, 5, 6, 4, or one of those, it's going to limit your range of melodic choices, and that in turn will push you ever closer. There's only so many solutions to the, a chord progression which needs a melody is a problem which needs a solution. And the solution, there are only so many solutions to this problem that are going to work. And there's going to be, as we were saying before, there's going to be some solutions which work better than others. And if you come to the same conclusion. So simple things mean fewer choices, mean greater likelihood of plagiarism, basically. And don't be aware of your own ability to plagiarize yourself as well. Because sometimes, and you hear this a lot, composers and songwriters will essentially reinvent something they've done before without realizing it. So they'll plagiarize their own music. Now, this is not always a serious thing. If you're an artist, a commercial artist, that's not the end of the world. If, however, you're composer doing an advert or something, and that tune was commissioned by Shell or something, then you're in trouble because they own it. So self-plagiarization can be a real problem as well. There is one pretty reliable way of sort of avoiding some of this, and well, it slightly limits your creative choices, and that is, you start with a piece of inspiration that is a piece of music that is out of copyright. The copyright in a piece of music, the duration varies around the world, but normally it lasts until 70 years after the death of the last living creative contributor. So if there's two people wrote a song, Oscars and Hammerstein or something, the last of them to die, plus 70 years, that is the lifetime of copyright. Now, if somebody writes something when they're 20, they die when they're 90, you can see that copyright goes on for a long, long, long time. However, if you go back, if you're just taking the basis of the motif, the basis of the theme, and you go back to classical and folk tunes, you see a lot of folk tunes are out of copyright. You can use something like this. This is in itself, I think, out of print, but it's a wonderful book it's a dictionary of musical themes, and it sort of organises them pitch by pitch, and there's just one theme after another in here, and the vast majority of them are out of copyright, but you need to check that, obviously. But you can use a phrase like that as the inspiration for your tune and document the fact that that's where it came, and it can help. It can help. I mean, because one of the ways people defend themselves against claims of infringement of copyright is to try and find a tune which predates both your tune and the person who's suing you, which is out of copyright. So I've written a tune, oh my lord, it sounds exactly like Star Wars, and John Williams says, that's my tune, or whatever, and you say, no, it's not. It's the opening movement of Beethoven's whatever. Actually, on that subject, this kind of problem, I'll leave you this one thought. This kind of problem happens to everyone. And I would merely point you in the direction of listen to the opening of Star Wars and then go and listen to a film score called King's Realm. And there is a similarity between the two. I say no more than that. But look, I hope you found this useful Don't let it stop you writing music. You know, it's better to write something great than not. And yes, there is, you know, always the risk that you're accidentally going to plagiarize somebody else. But if you go through these steps and don't get too paranoid about it, you know, you should be able to write great music of your own, which then somebody else will plagiarize and you can sue them. Look, I hope you found this useful. As ever, there's you know, all kinds of useful stuff to download underneath this video, and we've got lots and lots of interesting stuff along these lines for you to learn on thinkspaceeducation.com, which is where I hang out. Actually, I live there. I live in this little box on the website. I never go anywhere else. This is all virtual reality, and I live in the ThinkSpace Education website, producing fantastic educational materials for people like you. So whether you want to learn to write music, want to learn about music business, we've got a master's degree in that, you want to learn about film scoring, we do master's degrees in that, and short courses in that, and yeah, it's all great. So why don't you come over? See you soon. Bye-bye.